Most civilizations don't end with a single catastrophic event. They fade gradually, worn down by pressures that accumulate over generations. The process is often invisible to those living through it, a slow erosion of systems that once held society together. Consider the case of the classic Maya civilization, which reached its height between 250 and 900 say across what is now Guatemala, Belize, and southern Mexico. At its peak, the Maya built elaborate cities, developed sophisticated mathematics and astronomy, and supported millions of people through intensive agriculture. Yet by the 10th century, many of their greatest urban centers had been abandoned. Historians suggest the decline began with environmental stress. The Maya heartland experienced a series of prolonged droughts between 800 and 1000 C, identified through sediment cores and cave formations. These droughts would not have been catastrophic on their own, but they arrived at a moment when the population had reached the limits of what the land could sustain. The Maya had cleared forests for agriculture and urban expansion. This deforestation reduced rainfall and degraded soil quality, making the agricultural system more vulnerable. When the droughts came, crop yields fell. Evidence from skeletal remains indicates increasing malnutrition during this period, particularly among common people. As food became scarce, the economic foundation of Maya society weakened. The elite had relied on agricultural surplus to fund monumental construction, support craft specialists, and maintain their authority through ritual ceremonies. When that surplus shrank, the entire system began to strain. Research points to growing inequality during the late Classic period. Elites continued to invest in elaborate palaces and monuments, even as conditions worsened for farmers. This imbalance likely eroded trust in traditional leadership. Archaeological evidence shows that some royal compounds were burned or vandalized, suggesting social unrest. Trade networks also deteriorated. The Maya had depended on long-distance exchange of obsidian, jade, cacao, and other goods. As individual city-states weakened, they could no longer maintain these connections. The loss of trade further reduced resources and accelerated decline. Administrative complexity may have played a role as well. Maya kingdoms had developed intricate bureaucracies to manage irrigation, collect tribute, and coordinate labor. These systems required constant maintenance and communication. When resources tightened, maintaining this complexity became increasingly difficult. The structure of Maya governance itself created vulnerabilities. Each city-state operated independently, ruled by its own royal dynasty. These kingdoms competed for prestige and resources, sometimes engaging in rivalry that drained their strength. When environmental and economic pressures mounted, this fragmentation prevented coordinated responses. The calendar system and ritual cycles that organized Maya life required significant resources to maintain. Elaborate ceremonies involved offerings, feasts, and the construction of new monuments to mark important dates. As the economy weakened, sustaining these practices became harder, yet abandoning them would have undermined the authority that legitimized the ruling class. Population density had created another challenge. Major cities like Tikal housed tens of thousands of people in close proximity. This concentration required constant food imports from surrounding agricultural areas. When those areas suffered crop failures, urban populations faced immediate shortages. The cities had become dependent on a supply system that had little margin for error. Water management added further complexity. The Maya built sophisticated reservoirs and channels to capture and store rainwater during the wet season. These systems needed regular maintenance and repair. During droughts, when water was most needed, the infrastructure often proved inadequate. Some reservoirs show evidence of contamination, suggesting that water quality declined as desperation grew. Skilled artisans and scribes depended on elite patronage for their livelihoods. As royal courts struggled financially, these specialists lost their support. The intricate knowledge required to maintain temples, create ceremonial objects, and record dynastic histories began to disappear as fewer people could afford the training. Religious authority also faced erosion. The Maya elite had claimed special connections to the gods, legitimizing their rule through public rituals and astronomical knowledge. When droughts persisted despite elaborate ceremonies, this claim to divine favor became harder to sustain. Cities didn't collapse all at once. The process was uneven, spreading across the region over more than a century. Some centers were abandoned first, while others persisted longer. People gradually migrated away from the southern lowlands, moving north or dispersing into smaller settlements. The institutions that had organized Maya life simply stopped functioning. What remains striking is how resilient the system had been before this point. The Maya had weathered earlier droughts and political disruptions. But by the 9th century, multiple stresses converged: environmental degradation, climate variability, social strain, and institutional fragility. No single factor caused the decline. Instead, these pressures reinforced each other, creating a cascade that the civilization could not reverse. The Maya people themselves did not disappear. Millions of their descendants live in the region today, maintaining languages and traditions that stretch back centuries. What ended was a particular form of political and social organization, a set of institutions that had once seemed permanent. This pattern appears across history. Complex societies create systems that work well under certain conditions. Over time, those conditions change through environmental shifts, resource depletion, or internal contradictions. If the society cannot adapt quickly enough, its structures begin to fail. The decline is rarely dramatic. It unfolds slowly, almost imperceptibly, until one day the old order is simply gone. The lesson is not that collapse is inevitable, but that it emerges from accumulated pressures rather than sudden shocks. Civilizations decline when their institutions lose the flexibility to respond to changing circumstances, when social bonds weaken under inequality, and when the environment can no longer support the demands placed upon it. Understanding this process requires looking beyond individual events to the deeper patterns that unfold across generations. The end of the classic Maya remains uncertain in many details, but the broader arc is clear. Order broke down not in a moment, but across a long, quiet unraveling that no one at the time could fully reverse.